The Maximum Destruction truck has endured a lot since its debut, from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows, and from an uncertain future to unforgettable memories. Today, we pick up where we left off in the evolution of Maximum Destruction. In 2014, Team Max D would undertake a new driver in the wake of Craig Christensen leaving the team. During his tenure of driving Max D, he was an instrumental figure of building up the Australian monster truck industry, even driving on occasion. This conflicted with his Monster Jam schedule, and when given the ultimatum between the two, he chose to stick with the Australian industry. As a result, Max D number 4 would no longer have a driver, which is where the former Iron Man driver Morgan Kane would be drafted to the team to campaign the truck. Kane would make his debut in Max D on January 3rd and 4th in Des Moines, Iowa, winning freestyle at all 3 shows. He would get numerous opportunities to drive Max D in stadiums and would win in Detroit Show 1. For Mentz and Elliott, it was business as usual. Both drivers would run in stadiums and arenas, with success in both venue types. Also by this time, Max D would continue to use the Spike body and the Max D name, albeit slightly altered to no longer feature the anniversary decals. At the World Finals, Tom Mentz would compete in his 15th World Finals in the even more expanded 32 truck field, but he had shown that he was the master at adapting to any new situation. He would finish 3rd in qualifying, just behind Damon Bradshaw and Dennis Anderson. In the Racing Championship, he was looking good up until the semi-finals. As we've talked about many times before, this race was very controversial due to the shutoff of Mentz's truck for no good reason. Despite what had happened a year prior, Mentz was awarded with a second chance, which resulted in a win for Tom Mentz and another shot at a racing championship. The final race saw Tom Mentz square off against Adam Anderson, the reigning racing champion, and just so happened to be the man who defeated him a year prior. And history would repeat itself again, as Mentz's truck would get swirly out of the straightaway and corkscrew off the ramp, handing Anderson another racing championship. Freestyle would be a truck killer. Many big names would go out early due to truck breakage, but Todd LeDuc would be the one to survive it all and win freestyle. In saying that, Tom Mentz put up a good fight and ultimately finished 3rd. While he didn't have Todd LeDuc's insane leap, he did have 2 great saves and a backflip, not to mention incredible pace throughout. For the rest of the year, Max D soldiered on, taking a few wins in the arenas and speedways, but took much more in stadiums and internationally. All 3 drivers would compete on the international tour, with many wins in marquee cities like Melbourne, Australia, Auckland, New Zealand, and Warsaw, Poland. Over the summer, Max D was also featured on the Path of Destruction tour, this time only competing in East Rutherford and the newly added Foxborough, Massachusetts. 2015 would be a huge year for Team Max D. 2 of the trucks would be placed on a points championship series for the very first time, with Morgan Kane competing on the #MoreMonsterJam series and Neil Elliott competing on the inaugural Fox Sports 1 championship series. Tom Mentz would not compete on any series, instead driving the truck in various stadiums and arenas over the winter. On the #MoreMonsterJam tour, it was a constant tussle between Team Gravedigger and Team Max D. Now is also a good time to mention the irony of these 2 opposing trucks, as on the #MoreMonsterJam tour, Colton Eichelberger, the new Gravedigger driver, is the stepson to Tom Mentz, but is driving Gravedigger. And even though Morgan Kane was already a year into driving Max D by this point, he grew up being friends with the Andersons. Logic, I suppose. Ultimately, the experience from Morgan Kane took Max D to its first win on the series. Meanwhile, on the Fox Sports 1 series, it was a slow start for Neil Elliott, but the consistency of the team and a little bit of luck propelled him to his first championship series win. In Arlington, Neil would miss out on competition due to illness, which would mean that Lupe Souza would fill in for him, having a notable crash during freestyle. Tom Mentz would also be successful, claiming some big wins on his tour like in El Paso, Vancouver, and New Orleans. At the World Finals, the presence of Max D was bigger than ever. Due to the rules of the points series, the winners would receive an automatic World Finals invite, and with both of the Max D drivers winning their tours, this meant that they would join Tom Meents in Max D. To distinguish them from Meents' truck, the points champions would debut two new colorful schemes. Neil Elliott would debut a fan favorite, that being the Candy Apple Red Max D, while Morgan Kane would debut a gold Max D in the style of the original Maximum Destruction truck. During qualifying, the Max D team had varied success. The team leader Tom Meents qualified all the way down in 25th, with Morgan Kane, a World Finals rookie, taking a 16th fastest position. But the best performing driver for the team was Neil Elliott, who put Max D Red in the top 4. In racing, Max D continued to have varying levels of success. Morgan Kane ironically would be pitted up against Colton Eichelberger, his season rival. However, Kane would be knocked out in the racing bracket in just the second race of the night. Neil Elliott would make it past round 1, but would be defeated by Dustin Brown in round 2. It would be Tom Meents who qualified the worst, putting down the best result for the team, making it all the way to round 3 before he was defeated by the reigning world freestyle champion and soon to be new racing champion Todd LeDuc. The freestyle track wasn't as much of a truck killer as the year previous, but it certainly claimed a lot of victims. That could not be said for Team Max D, as they all had very good runs. Morgan Kane laid down a pretty solid run with some huge leaps and great flow, which put him 10th overall. Neil Elliott started off with a fairly reserved run, but lit the wick when he pulled off this jaw-dropping save that nobody was expecting.
I hope this isn't the end, Scott Ryan. Wait a minute!
He flipped over not too long after, finishing 12th overall. But once again, it would be Tom Meents who would have the greatest shot at winning another freestyle title, finishing 4th overall with an all-out air assault and a fantastic save to end his run. Unfortunately though, huge breakage with the frame and the truck itself put an end to what was, in my opinion, could have been a World Finals championship winning run. Over the summer, Team Max D would have a historic run as all 3 drivers would be out in full force. Morgan Kane would run Max D in various arenas and some European stops for the rest of the year, continuing the format of the #MoreMonsterJam stops. Meanwhile, Neil Elliott would primarily compete internationally, though he would compete at one of the stops for the Path of Destruction Tour. Meents would have the pleasure to compete and visit the last 3 stadium stops of the year, with these shows featuring 2 groundbreaking stunts for the Path of Destruction Tour in East Rutherford and Foxborough. Santa Clara would see Tom Meents win freestyle with one of the best freestyle runs of all time, pulling off 3 unbelievable saves. In East Rutherford, Neil Elliott would drive Max D and take home the freestyle win, whilst Tom Meents prepared for the world's first front flip stunt. The truck would bounce off the landing ramp, resulting in an endo, but would land on all 4 wheels afterwards. In Foxborough, Lupe Souza would return to drive Max D, but only for racing, as Tom Meents would compete during freestyle. This was decided after his halftime stunt was technically unsuccessful, as he destroyed the truck upon landing. This was his 3rd attempt of the double backflip stunt, which as you can see, he sort of landed, but sort of didn't. Tom Meents would also pick up victories in West Lebanon and New Western, with Max D doing very well internationally, as Morgan Kane and Neil Elliott both contributed wins. 2016 would be a huge year for Team Max D with some big changes. For starters, Colton Eichelberger, Tom Meents' stepson, would finally drive for his stepdad's team, with Morgan Kane being traded over to Team Gravedigger. In addition to this, Colton's brother, Jared Eichelberger, who acted as Colton's crew chief the previous year, was now driving a 2nd Max D on the now rebranded AMSOIL Championship Series. Meanwhile, Neil Elliott and Tom Meents would trade places, with Tom Meents now competing on the FS1 series and Neil Elliott competing in other regular stadium events. Also new to this year was the addition of the colored Max Ds. Neil Elliott would bring back the Candy Apple Red Max D, while Colton and Jared would receive all new designs. Colton would be given the gold Max D, this time being fitted to the updated spiked body, but this new body would not debut until until halfway into his series, driving Morgan Kane's World Finals body in the meantime. Jared, on the other hand, would drive the short-lived yellow Max D, which, let's be honest guys, this was just an eyesore. Well, the first edition was at least, but I still don't think that this was a good-looking truck. In combination with Eichelberger's new schemes, both debuted new chassis as well as Max D4 being retired. Colton would debut the 6th Max D chassis, while Jared debuted the 7th. Team Max D had some success during this season, but definitely not to the level of the previous year. Team Max D finished 2nd in the West Amsoil Series and 3rd in the East, both being defeated by Team Gravedigger. It's not like Max D wasn't taking wins, but Team Gravedigger and Team Zombie on the East Series were just a little more consistent with the wins. On the Fox Sports 1 Championship Series, Adam Anderson was on a generational run, completely dominating this series, with Anderson taking a win at almost every single stop on the tour. Mens did finish 3rd behind last year's series runner-up, Damon Bradshaw. It would be Neil Elliott who would have the most success during the year, racking up wins in Anaheim, Arlington, Oakland, and El Paso. At the World Finals, only 3 of the Max D drivers would compete in the main field, with one of them not even driving Max D. Neil would run the FS1 Cletus truck on top of his Max D chassis, while Colton and Tom would drive their own Max D trucks. Jared would unfortunately be relegated to the Young Gun Shootout, which marked the first time a Max D truck would compete in the Young Gun Shootout. Jared would only make it past round 1, crashing out in round 2. Meanwhile, in the main event, Tom Mance would qualify 6th fastest, while Colton would unfortunately qualify 30th. The woes for Colton continued, as he was defeated in round 1 by Ryan Anderson. On the other hand, Tom Mance would make it into round 3 once again, ironically being defeated by Ryan Anderson as well. Round 2 also saw the last time Dennis Anderson and Tom Mance would square off in a race against each other. Both would make mistakes in the final turn, but it culminated in a dogfight to the finish line. After Morgan Kane, the former Max D driver turned Team Gravedigger driver, was crowned the racing champion, Tom Mance would come back out to perform the most trucks jumped at that time, which would be 5. During freestyle, both Max D trucks and even Neil Elliott's FS1 truck would unfortunately not perform the best, with all 3 of them finishing in 18th, 19th, and 20th place. Over the summer, Max D would compete all over the world with a little more success than at the start of the season. Max D would be fairly competitive but not pick up any wins in the summer stadium shows. But Mens put the fans on their feet with an incredible freestyle runs and bringing out the 5-truck jump stunt in Santa Clara and East Rutherford. Max D also took home wins on the Speedway circuit, winning in West Lebanon and Stafford Springs. The bulk of wins came once again from the international circuit, with wins in Osaka, Japan, Rotterdam, Netherlands, Mexico, Stockholm, Sweden, and across the Australian tour. Tom Mance would also return to compete internationally, sticking with the European cities while Neil Elliott competed in Asia and Australia. These European shows would also feature Tom Mance performing various stunts, either being a wall of steel stunt or even a double backflip attempt in Frankfurt, Germany, although this was performed by Colton Eichelberger. In Santiago, Chile, Chuck Warner would drive Max D once again. In the October Glendale event, Jared Eichelberger would drive the red Max D on top of a CRD chassis, and while he wouldn't win anything, he would have this infamous moment with his tire breaking off and somehow perfectly landing on top of the backflip ramp. Minneapolis would once again welcome Monster Jam to their city, as the newly opened US Bank Stadium would be christened with their first Monster Jam show in December of that year. While Tom would only win racing at show 2, he would lay down an incredible freestyle at show 1 with his jaw-dropping save. This show would also see him debut Max D8 to replace the outgoing Max D3. 2017 would mark an important year for Team Max D, as they would once again go through some struggle periods. Max D would be represented once again on the rebranded Arena Series, now known as the Triple Threat Series. Colton and Jared would return to their trucks, albeit without their colored bodies. Meanwhile, the FS1 Championship Series would expand to an Eastern and Western tour, so both Tom Meents and Neil Elliott would compete on those tours. Team Max D would start the year off well, with Colton doing very well on Triple Threat East and Tom Meents winning racing in San Antonio Show 2. However, in New Orleans, Tom Meents' career was put on hold after an injury sustained during freestyle. This put him on hold, and with the Championship Series format, this would cause quite the shakeup across the circuit. Colton Eichelberger was chosen to fill in for Tom Meents, but this left his seat vacant. This then allowed rookie driver Blake Granger to make his Master Jam debut, driving in place of Colton Eichelberger. On the Triple Threat Series, both Max Ds finished in the runner-up position. Blake had an especially tough fight, not only with it being his debut season, but he had to face Tyler Menninger, the former Blue Thunder driver who was drafted to Team Gravedigger and showed why he would soon be a world champion. Meanwhile, Max D had some success on both FS1 tours, though Colton was getting used to driving immense chassis for the very first time. Safe to say, it was a steep learning curve, but he was definitely up to the challenge. Most notably, he took Max D to an incredible freestyle win in Houston Show 3 with a barrage of unbelievable saves. He ultimately finished third on his series, just behind Morgan Kane and Lindsey Wink. Meanwhile, on the Western Series, Neil Elliott finished runner-up to Todd LeDuc, who won this series. Speaking of Neil, he would drive his Candy Apple Red Max D on his CRD chassis in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. This World Finals would mark the first time that Tom Meents would not be there as a competitor due to his injury. Colton and Neil would receive invites into the main field, with Jared once again competing in the Young Guns shootout. Now, the Double Down Showdown. This time around, both Max D trucks finished well in qualifying, with both qualifying within the top 10 and Neil Elliott amongst the top 3. In racing, however, both Max Ds would be eliminated before the semifinals. Freestyle was both a tremendous and disappointing showing for Team Max D. Colton finished 27th with a very disappointing run, flipping over relatively early into his run. On the contrary, Neil Elliott laid down what many consider to be the true winning run from that year, finishing second overall. Elliott also made history, successfully landing the world's first reverse backflip. The summer proved to be very successful for Team Max D. Not only were 3 of their drivers competing in full force and winning fairly often, but by the time Foxborough rolled around, Tom Meents had healed from his injuries and was back to claim gold. While he didn't win in Foxborough, he struck gold in East Rutherford, winning racing and freestyle, and then furthered his success in Nashville with a 2-wheel skills win. Speaking of, by this time, the 2-wheel skills competition was slowly being introduced into the sport, and one of the first teams to adapt to this was Team Max D. Not only because of the skill of their drivers, but because Tom Meents was training the new and upcoming talent at Monster Jam University. By this point, Meents was an instrumental figure in Monster Jam, helping push the sport forward with new tricks and stunts, but also training the next generation. And this new generation would have to learn these new 2-wheel maneuvers, which Meents himself was getting very good at. Internationally, Neil Elliott would primarily compete, putting Max D consistently in the winner's circle. In saying that, there were 4 other drivers who would compete in Max D internationally that year. Colton Eichelberger would drive Max D in Mexico City, while his brother Jared Eichelberger drove in the elusive Alxa China show. Meanwhile, Chuck Warner would drive Max D once again in Chile, and Colt Stevens, the former Doomsday driver, would drive Max D in Sao Paulo, Brazil, a pairing you might want to remember for later on. In 2018, things would return to normal for Team Max D. Colton and Jared would compete in the Triple Threat Series. and Neil Elliott and Tom Mance would once again compete on 2 Stadium Championship Series. Elliott would also debut Max D9, which would end up being the last men's chassis ever constructed. 2018 would also mark the 15th anniversary of Max D, though no special designs were put together for any of the trucks. The Eichelbergers had a tough season as once again the two would be dominated by Gravedigger, though Jared had some extra competition with Justin Sipes in Megalodon. Meanwhile, on the Stadium Series, there were wins across the board for both trucks. While Tom Mance would fall short to Charlie Porkin on Stadium Series 2, Neil Elliott would prevail as the series champion on Stadium Series 1. At the World Finals, 3 Max Ds would enter into the field once again, with Jared once again competing in the Double Down Showdown. Jared would make it past round 2, nearly making it into the finals, but was defeated by Corey Rummel, who would go on to win the Double Down Showdown. In qualifying, Tom Mance was notably slower than his teammates, with Eichelberger qualifying 9th and Elliott finishing 2nd. However, no Max D would make it past round 2, as Colton and Tom would be defeated in round 1, and Elliott would be defeated by Bari Musawa in round 2. However, the team would end off their night on a high note, as they would celebrate 15 years of Max D in an encore to close out the racing portion of the event. Monster Jam would reattempt the forward momentum backflip, a stunt they had performed a year prior with Neil Elliott inside the 25th anniversary Monster Jam truck. This encore would see many colored Max Ds make a return, including the Candy Apple Red, the Gold, and even the original Maximum Destruction truck, which fans could not get enough of. These trucks were also on display during the pit party, as well as this amazing reconstruction of the Arlington 2011 crash. However, the talk of the night was what Tom Mance's truck came out in. A blacked out Max D was brought into the stadium the same way Mance had come in for his 10th anniversary nearly 5 years ago. After pulling off a set of moonwalks off the backflip ramp, the 3 men's chassis would line up for a triple forward momentum backflip. However, the ramp, for whatever reason, was working about as well as a Max D RC ordered from Temu, and was basically the equivalent of an RC Gravedigger that was ordered from Wish.com, as not a single truck could complete a rotation. Mance's truck didn't even rotate at all, instead launching him high into the sky, which was a disappointing ending, but it definitely put the destruction back into Maximum Destruction. During freestyle, Team Max D would have a roller coaster of a night. Mance wouldn't have the best freestyle run as he rolled over fairly early. On the other hand, Colton Eichelberg would have a really good run to start off the night, finishing 13th, while Neil Elliott laid down a solid run to finish 8th overall. Mance would also partake in another encore, lending his stunt truck to be part of the Rampage encore, attempting yet another double backflip and ending up unsuccessful. After the World Finals had been and done, the rest of the year proved relatively successful for Team Max D. Neil Elliott began touring internationally, though he did fulfill some stateside dates here and there. Jared and Colton remained in the arenas and speedways, though Colton would drive Max D in Glendale later that year. The summer show saw Max D thrive in the two-wheel competition, with most of the wins coming from that said competition. Though in the arenas, Colton and Jared traded some wins and added to their total. Internationally, Neil Elliott was holding up the fort, winning in cities like Lyon, France, Cardiff, Wales, and Rotterdam, Netherlands. Also touring internationally, or Australia specifically, would be the legend himself, Tom Mance. This would end up being my first time meeting Tom, getting to see him perform in Sydney. For all of the events on that tour that year, Tom Mance would perform the 6-truck jump in all cities, however, never fully landing the move and usually rolling over afterwards. The only attempt that didn't see him roll over was in Sydney, but the trucks were pushed off out of the way in case Mance landed on them due to the weather that had rolled through ANZ Stadium. Mance dominated in Australia, winning all but one of Australia's two-wheel skills events, and won freestyle in Sydney. Chuck Warner would cap off his legendary career once again driving Max D, competing in Santiago, Chile, La Plata, Argentina, and Sao Paulo, Brazil, taking at least one win from each city. For the final event of the year in Minneapolis, Tom Meents would dominate the event, winning the first and only 4-truck racing competition. Seriously, who on God's green earth thought this was a good idea? 2-wheel skills and the overall event championship. In 2019, there would be some big changes within the MaxD team. For starters, Jared Eichelberger had retired from driving, giving a call-up for Blake Granger to compete in his first full season. The other big change came from Tom Meents, as he would now be representing the all-new Fire and Ice thematic series, driving MaxD Fire for the duration of the year. Taking a little inspiration from the red Maximum Destruction toy from Hot Wheels, this new Fire MaxD brung the heat quite literally to the competition with its new fiery aesthetic. Blake would have a fairly good season, but was notably absent from some events, ironically letting Jared Eichelberger return to fill in for Blake Granger. He finished third on his series, and Colton Eichelberger would end up second to Tyler Menninger once again on Stadium Series West. Meanwhile, on the Stadium Series, Tom Meents and Neil Elliott were consistently performing well. Neil was constantly battling for the top spot on the series, but he would lose out to Adam Anderson. Tom Meents had an incredible season driving MaxD Fire, and would win his very first series championship. At the World Finals, the presence of MaxD was more than it ever was before. Due to the expansion of the World Finals, MaxD would be competing in all of the 7 World Championships plus the Double Down Showdown. Tom Meents and Neil Elliott would compete in the main field and the all-new 2-wheel skills championship, with Meents also competing in the all-new high jump championship. Meanwhile, Blake Granger alongside Colton Eichelberger would compete in the ATV and Speedster championships. Blake also competed in the Double Down Showdown. Qualifying went very well for Team MaxD, with both Meents and Neil finishing in the top 5. On Friday, it was championship day, and Team MaxD was determined to take home one of these new championships, if not more. MaxD would sweep the ATV competitions with a constant joust between Eichelberger and Granger. In the end, MaxD took home the first and only ATV championship, with Blake Granger being crowned as champion. MaxD was tough during the Speedsters, but left unsuccessful in both competitions. In the Double Down Showdown, Granger would make it into the semifinals, but was defeated by Lindsay Reed in Scooby-Doo. The 2-wheel skills championship would see Elliott and Meents give it their best shot, and while Elliott finished 4th, it would be the professor himself, Tom Meents, claiming his 12th world title and the first 2-wheel skills championship in history. In the racing competition, both MaxDs would be eliminated in round 2, not even making it past their first race. On Saturday, Team MaxD could not claim any more championships, though the effort was definitely there. Meents finished 7th in high jump, but he did finish 10th in freestyle with an outrageous leap on his first jump. Neil Elliott wouldn't have the best run, finishing 17th overall. Over the summer, MaxD would do relatively well across the board, with some wins in the stadiums, but a bulk of it came from speedways and arenas. Glendale would see Tom Meents pull off, in my opinion, one of the best saves in history. However, the International Series is where MaxD shine the best. Colton Eichelberger would take over the events in South Africa and Melbourne, Australia, while Neil Elliott drove in Europe, Asia, and Saudi Arabia. At the inaugural All-Star Challenge in Las Vegas, Tom Meents captained Team Fire, with his other teammates being split amongst the 2 teams. Neil Elliott would be drafted to Team Ice, with Colton Eichelberger competing alongside his stepfather on Team Fire. Neil would be a valuable player for Team Ice, as he was one of their best drivers. And while Eichelberger would perform better than his father, Meents did have the highlight of the team successfully pulling off his best trick move. which many consider the true winner of the competition. Later on, Blake Granger would participate in Puerto Rico, and Tom Meents would drive Max D in Sao Paulo, Brazil. In 2020, it was much of the same. Max D Fire would continue to run under Tom Meents on Stadium Series Yellow, while Neil Elliott would compete on Stadium Series Green. Competition was fierce on these Stadium Series. On Stadium Series Green, Neil Elliott was dominating, but he had to fight Morgan Kane, Ryan Anderson, and many other tough competitors. Meanwhile, on Stadium Series Yellow, Tom Meents was not one to count out, but Charlie Porkin and Camden Murphy were always drivers that were foiling his plans. In the arenas, Colton Eichelberger and Blake Granger would compete on a triple threat series. Colton would finally be rid of Tyler Menninger, with Blake Granger now having to face the champ. Colton would look to be the series winner as he dominated Triple Threat Central, but it was a constant tussle between himself and Justin Sipes. Blake Granger would unfortunately finish second to Tyler, though at least he could say he fought until the very end. 2020 was the year of the pandemic, and as a result, all tours except for Triple Threat Series East, which coincidentally finished just before the pandemic started, all tours would be cancelled and the champions were crowned based upon the points before cancellation. This meant that Colton Eichelberger and Neil Elliott would be crowned champions of their tours, as they were leading the points on their tours at that time. Meents finished third, only 10 points behind the series leader, Charlie Porkin. With the pandemic in effect, no one really knew when we would see Max D again, or Monster Jam in general. We would see Max D in August, however, as Tom Meents, alongside 6 other Monster Jam drivers, attempted to break 7 world records in a special episode of The Diesel Brothers. Tom Meents was tasked with the longest nose wheelie, and he would pull off 2 world record-setting attempts. Sort of. You see, he would outdo his first attempt, walking it all the way into the bushes, but due to not setting the truck down onto all fours in time, the second attempt wouldn't count. His first attempt did count, and still stands to this day. As the world began very slowly easing up, Max D would make its return along with Monster Jam itself at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas later that October. 2 events would see Max D be successful in both, winning racing at Show 1, but claiming both overall event championships. While Max D was continuing to dominate, the future of Max D by this point, however, was starting to look noticeably bleak, especially heading into 2021. In 2021, Team Max D would return to half strength. The future of most of the team was uncertain until around March or April of that year. Neil Elliott had announced in the end of January he would not be returning to the sport. Blake Granger was also nowhere to be seen as Tom entered stepson Colton. During the winter, Monster Jam would host a Stadium Championship Series featuring 12 of their best talents, including Tom Meents and Max D Fire. Max D started out the series strong in the first 3 rounds, but faltered in the last 3. In Orlando, he would win in 2-wheel skills, but by this point the grasp on the series title was starting to fall more in favor of Ryan Anderson and Todd LeDoux. He would pick up 2 wins in Tampa and 1 final win in Arlington, but by this point the championship series was already in the hands of Ryan Anderson. Upon the finish of this series, Monster Jam would continue to have more events in other stadiums which Tom Meents would compete in. Max D would participate, although by this point, Max D would bring back the original spiked body, although with one notable change. The spike plates on the side of the truck would be removed, which although some people, including myself, initially hated, many grew to love as the truck now had a sleeker look and resembled more of the original Maximum Destruction body. With this new body, Max D dominated some of these events as Tom Meents continued to show what he was made of. He won 3 competitions in the debut show at Atlanta Motor Speedway, 2 competitions in St. Louis, Glendale, and Indianapolis, and a single win in Kansas City and later that year in Foxborough. In July, Monster Jam rolled into East Rutherford, and this event would be notable for 2 things. One, due to severe weather, the event was postponed to Sunday, but the other, due to Tom Mance's failed backflip during freestyle, resulted in Max D8 being severely damaged. Because of this, what was Neil Elliott's chassis would begin being used by Tom Mance instead, and Max D8 would become the stunt truck chassis. Beginning in Austin, Texas on August 7th, Colton Eichelberger would return to the sport driving Max D, winning both two-wheel skills events. Eichelberger would be scheduled for 5 more arena events for the rest of the year, with Max D performing very, very well in all cities. Tom Mance would finish his year off in Glendale, El Paso, Arlington, and Houston, however, taking home no wins. In 2022, Team Max D was noticeably not as prominent as it once was. Initially, Max D was supposed to be present on both Stadium Series with no arena spots. Colton Eichelberger would drive on Stadium Series Yellow, while Tom Mance would compete on Stadium Series Red. For reasons unknown, this would never come to fruition, and Blake Granger would replace Colton but was demoted to arenas. On Arena Series Central, Blake Granger would put up somewhat of a worthy fight to Tony Oakes and Kristen Anderson, but that year, Oakes and Anderson were just in a league of their own. He would ultimately finish 4th behind Elvis Linus, Oakes, and Anderson. In Lincoln, Nebraska, UNOH graduate Brandon Rassel would get to drive Max D for the weekend. Meanwhile, on Stadium Series Red, Tom Mance was back to winning consistently, though he noticeably had no racing wins to his name. He would consistently make it far into the racing brackets only to lose, some even seeing him making it to the championship race like in Salt Lake City. Tom Mance went winless in the racing competition for the entire year, which was very surprising. At the World Finals, there were high hopes for Tom Mance. For 2 years, there was an absence of a World Finals, and Mance had to defend his two-wheel skills championship. Not only that, but a brand new racing course was constructed that proved very challenging for the drivers. The all-new over-under course was difficult for most to overcome, but there was only one driver who consistently succeeded when it mattered most: Tom Mance. In qualifying, Tom Mance laid down the fastest time, which gave hope to his fans that he might get a 13th World Championship. Saturday night came and there were dramas beginning to unfold. The weather was severe, with thunderstorms and extreme rain throughout. So much so, the rain postponed the two-wheel skills event to the following day. Saturday night would begin with the encore, and that would see Tom Mance pull off the world's first reverse forward momentum backflip, a move he nearly landed but flipped over onto his roof. Blake Granger's Max D would start the racing competition off doing a practice lap in his Max D truck as another way to try and dry out the track and hype the fans up. During the racing competition, Max D was on his way to being knocked out by World Finals rookie Weston Anderson, but due to Weston missing the ramp and sliding into the wall, Tom Mance would advance. His luck would run out in round 3, as despite winning the race, he missed the ramp, resulting in a 5-second penalty and a win for Earthshaker. As the rain poured during the championship race, two-wheel skills was moved to Sunday afternoon, and Tom Mance would get to have a crack at 3 more championships. The two-wheel skills championship was fierce and mattered more than ever, as each driver only received 1 attempt to pull off their best move. Tom Mance would shock the world with a move that was similar to his All-Star Challenge best trick move, which was his patented maximum moonwalk into reverse backflip. And this one was a hell of a lot cleaner too. With this jaw-dropping move, he had won his 13th World Championship. Hungry for more, Tom Mance was not done. He finished 2nd in high jump to Ryan Anderson, who claimed his first high jump championship. In freestyle, the track was only forgiving to those who could figure out its complexities. Nearing the end of the championship, Charlie Porkin looked to have freestyle wrapped up with his unbelievable run. Tom Mance, however, had other plans.
No matter what happens with Max D or Son of a Digger, and Tom goes hard on the front. He gets a nose wheelie stoppy into a moonwalk. Forward on the blue side of the track, sends Max D sky and big air comes down. Oh, almost right into the wall, but he saves it. And now another backflip coming up. Maximum air for Tom Meents, and he lands this one as well.
Tom Meents laid down an incredible freestyle run that had everything you could ask for. Incredible flow, a truly maximum moonwalk that came out of nowhere, 2 backflips, and an incredible cartwheel save in the corner of the track. Tom Meents was on fire. He only had one more truck to go through, and that was Ryan Anderson in Son of a Digger. Ryan put up a valiant effort, finishing 3rd, which would mean that Tom Meents would claim his 14th World Championship, 9 years since his last freestyle championship in 2013. As he continued to further his own record of driver with the most championships, he added yet another impossible statistic, as not only was he the only driver to double down at the World Finals, but do it not once, not twice, but 3 different times. It was safe to say he was on top of the world. With a once-in-a-lifetime performance at the World Finals, no one has or probably will ever be able to replicate. For the rest of the year, Max D would only be present internationally. It was a little bit unusual, but a rest for the now 14-time world champion was well deserved. Tom Meents' last event of the year came in the inaugural event in London, which saw him drive a CRD Max D for the very last time. This also marked his last international appearance, and he did not disappoint. He won 2-wheel skills and had an insane backflip during freestyle. Monster Jam's return to Australia marked the return of Colt Stevens to competition, as he had become a commentator for the 2021 and 2022 season, but was beginning the transition to become back behind the wheel. He would return to pilot Max D, and while he was a little rusty at first, he got the hang of it very quickly. He would win racing in Sydney, which was a very impressive result for him. Stevens would run Max D in Tampere, Finland, and Arnhem, Netherlands, but would leave empty-handed. Another driver who would also get their first taste inside Max D would be Mark List, who would drive the truck in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic. Mark List would only pick up 1 win in Max D, that being freestyle at San Juan Show 3. 2023 marked 20 years of the Max D name, and what better way to celebrate it than with another anniversary scheme. For the first time since the truck's redesign, Max D would return to the original futuristic SUV body, albeit with an all-new scheme. Designed in part with Star Creations, this new Max D 20th anniversary scheme was a beauty from day one, and Meents was ready to represent the name well. Unfortunately for him, most of his season wasn't exactly what he had expected. Arguably, his greatest misfortune of the season was the very first round in Oakland. During intros, Max D thundered out of the tunnel, but his motor would blow up and would not be able to return for the rest of the event. Leaving Oakland, this meant that Tom Meents had 0 points to his name in the championship series total, something that even now is unheard of. Even throughout the rest of the season, it looked as if the truck wasn't 100%, or Meents wasn't comfortable with the way the truck was behaving. I do believe part of that comes down to the layout of the paperclip style, which will become important later on. In saying that, Meents did have many events where he did well and won competitions, such as Anaheim, St. Louis, and Philadelphia. Arguably the most meaningful victory came at Minneapolis Show 2, where for the first time in nearly 2 years, Meents had finally won a racing competition, ironically defeating Adam Anderson in the process. Meents would dedicate this win to his father, who had passed away just a few days before the event. This emotional win for Tom inspired him to run a new nameplate for the rest of the season, dedicating it to his father. Meanwhile, Blake Granger would be moved over to compete on the International Series driving Max D. Granger would drive the regular Max D and finish consistently well leading up to the World Finals, winning in Stockholm, Abu Dhabi, and Germany. Speaking of Germany, whilst the shows in Dresden were taking place, At the same time, the 22nd World Finals was about to take place inside Nissan Stadium in Nashville, Tennessee. Tom Meents would be invited back in what would be his last ever World Finals. He had big shoes to fill, coming off his historic double down he had earned the previous year. Meents would only have to compete in 3 competitions this year rather than all 4. The skills challenge was tough on everyone, including Tom Meents, who finished dead last. Racing also didn't treat him too kindly, as he was penalized for missing the racing ramp and as a result did not make it past round 1. And while he did finish 7th in freestyle, it was definitely not the result he was looking for. Even stranger, there was not even an attempt at a Max D 20th anniversary encore, which felt insulting to many fans. There would be a Max D 20th anniversary display during the event, with one half of the chassis being a modern day Max D with the 20th anniversary body, and the other being a torn up Maximum Destruction truck, which was pretty cool. Just like last year though, for the rest of the year until November, Meents was absent from all shows, with the only Max D that was touring consistently was Blake Grange's Max D, who continued to do well on the international series, winning in London, each of the Australian stops, Puerto Rico, and Argentina. However, this may have been due to an announcement from Tom Meents himself from August of that year. On August 31st, 2023, Tom Meents announced to the world that the 2024 season would be his last competitive season with Monster Jam. Meents would campaign Max D one last time and run multiple schemes throughout the year, most of which were older and more nostalgic liveries that fans loved. The announcement sent shockwaves throughout the industry, many expressing their feelings. In November, the inaugural Superstar Challenge would take place in Anaheim, California at Angel Stadium. This event was similar to the All-Star Challenge, and interestingly, Meents would no longer be a captain for their team. Instead, he would solely focus on competing on Team Nitro, captained by Bari Musawa. He would also participate in the Thunder Roar's forward momentum backflip stunt over 2 trucks. The stunt would once again open the show, however, would go horribly wrong. The ramp would twist the truck off to the side, and as a result, cause Meents to land directly onto the cab of the other monster trucks. Thankfully, Meents left unscathed, but definitely was shooken up. The same could not be said for the stunt truck and the truck that he had landed on, both of which had extensive damage and were most likely retired afterwards. The issues for the Meents team unfortunately didn't stop there, as mechanical issues and just plain bad luck plagued Meents for the rest of the night, losing in round 1 of racing, failing his best trick and losing second gear during his freestyle run, finishing 10th overall. Thankfully, Meents had what was left in the year to regroup, rebuild, and recollect, and be ready for the upcoming 2024 season, which would send Tom Meents, and most likely Max D, off with one final hurrah. Stadium Championship Series East would be the battlegrounds for Meents' final season, but it would be a tough tour to compete on. An all-star field with the former and future world champions, the all-new JCB Diggertron with the reigning racing champion, and some of the best independents in all of Monster Jam. San Antonio would be the first stop on their tour, and Tom Meents debuted the split scheme Max D that was similar to the display truck from World Finals. On one side was the 20th anniversary scheme, with the other being the old school Maximum Destruction livery. As the lights came down, it was time to see what Tom Meents had in store for the retirement tour. At Show 1, he made it into the semi-finals in racing, finishing 8th in skills, but bounced back to win freestyle with an incredible save. Show 2 wasn't as good, being defeated in round 2 of racing and finishing 11th in freestyle due to an unfortunate rollover, but he did bounce back in skills, claiming 2nd place. Then, in Houston, the cards were starting to fall. For the first time since 2012, a Maximum Destruction body would compete for a full show, giving some fans some serious nostalgia. And fitting too, it was in Houston where he debuted the truck nearly 21 years ago. While Tom Meents could not compete in racing, he bounced back to 4th in the Skills Challenge and won freestyle with one of the greatest saves of the season.
Grew up watching Maximum Destruction and Tom Meents. Oh, a big save early
Trying to
on.
get it again.
Oh, the other side.
Double sidewall, sidewinder for Tom Meents.
At Show 2, he claimed his first Skills Challenge win of the season, but couldn't capitalize on a racing or freestyle win. Heading into St. Louis, fans couldn't get enough of his fantastic start to his retirement season. While he would run the regular Max D body, fans were screaming when Tom Meents put on an incredible freestyle at Show 1, as he won freestyle with another incredible save. However, heading into Indianapolis, it would be arguably his most important show of the season, for all the wrong reasons. Indianapolis was always a city where Tom Meents would do well, and was among many other places that was one of the many houses that Tom Meents built. It was the closest to home as well, and with that in mind and all of his family watching, Tom came out with arguably his greatest scheme yet, the return of the elusive Blackout Max D. The truck had never looked sleeker and was one of his personal favorites, and for good reason. White tail lights, white rims, completely black body, fans were in awe of this truck. Show 1 was one of his best shows by far, with his only real blunder being in racing, losing in round 2. He finished 2nd in the Skills Challenge and won freestyle with yet another kick-ass freestyle, finishing just a few points behind this series leader, Tyler Manninger. Show 2 looked to be the same, this time winning the Skills Challenge. His freestyle in Show 2 was building up to be a freestyle winning run, until this happened. In an eerily similar moment to what happened with Dennis Anderson's last run, a bad rebound caused Max D to flip straight onto his roof. Meents remained in the cab of his truck until he was pulled to the back. Monster Jam would soon make 2 announcements. One just a few days after Indianapolis that told fans that Tom Meents had sustained an injury, the extent of which was not revealed in that post. And then another one on February 13th, revealing that Colton Eichelberger would be returning to drive Max D for the remainder of the year. Tom Meents himself posted a few other updates of his progression through therapy, as well as a post which revealed that he had dislocated his neck during the crash. With Tom Meents unable to finish his retirement season how he wanted to, his stepson Colton would close out the truck's prestigious history with one last championship run, or at least that's what should have happened. Colton would make his debut in Tampa, although it appeared that the men's chassis was retired for the time being. The truck he used was Max D7, and in Tampa he brought out the iconic candy apple red body. While he didn't leave Tampa as a winner, he put on a great showing for the fans with an incredible save during Show 1's freestyle competition. Then, in Minneapolis, he continued to do well, but had nothing notable, debuting Max D Fire this time. All was looking great, Colton was performing well despite not winning anything, and without a moment's notice, by the end of Miami, he had simply just vanished. This then left a musical chairs of situations for Monster Jam to fill in the now vacant seat for Max D. They had already had to make a ton of changes due to the departure of Brandon Vincent. They now had to fill the seat for Max D as well. Blake Granger may have been the obvious choice, but he had shoes to fill internationally, primarily driving El Toro Loco, but on occasion Max D. Blake would drive Max D though in the States for the first few weeks in Orlando, Jacksonville, and Hartford, but it was decided that Cody Saucier would drive Max D for the rest of the season instead. He also joins Colton Eichelberger, Morgan Kane, and technically Tom Meents himself as the only drivers to have driven both Max D and Gravedigger, though he is the first and only driver to drive Max D and Gravedigger during the same season. Max D's last wins in the United States came from Blake Granger, winning skills in Jacksonville and a large majority of the competitions and overalls in Hartford. Saucier would go winless in Max D, but did put up a relatively good fight. Other Max D schemes that ran that year included the Fire Max D, which ran in Minneapolis and Foxborough, as well as the Nitro Max D, which ran in Atlanta. For the World Finals, Max D would not miss out on the competitions. Blake Granger would be crowned the very first International Series champion, giving him an automatic bid into the World Finals main field. Blake would also compete in the Two-Wheel Skills Championship, though he would finish 6th. In qualifying, however, he looked to have a pretty plausible shot at a racing championship. But this wouldn't matter as Max D suffered RAI issues and they couldn't fix the truck in time for the race. The woes for Max D unfortunately continued, with Max D finishing 22nd in freestyle after a bad bounce set the truck over. While Tom Meents was in attendance during the event, his weekend was full of surprises and his team didn't leave Los Angeles without some hardware, even if it wasn't a world championship. For starters, Mark Cole, Jamie Garner, and his daughter Hannah Meents surprised Tom with a faithful rebuild of his original mud car, Shake Me. This emotional moment brought tears to the eyes of an elated Tom Meents, who had revealed he had plans to do this himself at some point. Then, on the night of the awards ceremony, his teammate Blake Granger would join Brandon Talachka in being the co-breakout stars of the year, while Tom Meents himself would win Save of the Year from Houston. He then would receive the ultimate achievement, the first and so far only Lifetime Achievement Award. From here, it was revealed that Tom Meents was moving into the role of stunt coordinator while continuing his efforts as the professor at Monster Jam University, and that his time behind the wheel was unfortunately over. After this event, the future of Max D had never looked more bleak. Its founding driver had retired, and Blake Granger only had a few more dates to fulfill with the Max D truck. Earlier on in the year, he dominated San Jose, Costa Rica, with one of these wins featuring the highest score in Judges Zone history, with a 9.998. He later won 3 events in Arnhem and won racing in Dresden and Two-Wheel Skills in Cardiff. After this, Max D would be on hold until the Australian Tour rolled around, and unfortunately, this looked to be the end of Max D. The seeds were already beginning to sprout as Blake Granger continued to hint that these next 2 weekends might be the last 2 times that we would see Max D tear it up. I mean, there were a lot of people that expected this and knew it was coming, myself included, but there were an equal number of people who didn't. The last ride for Max D started off spectacularly. In Melbourne Show 1, he won racing and skills, but mechanical issues plagued him during freestyle. The truck was battling a mixture of age, as these trucks specifically had not run since Abu Dhabi earlier in June, and the unforgiving weather when it started to rain. At Melbourne Show 2, Max D wasn't much better. In fact, notably worse. Issues in racing took him to the pits. Then he only made 1 hit in skills before having to return to the back, and then once again in freestyle, more truck issues plagued him again. Granger was hopeful to be better in Sydney, wanting to put on one last maximum effort for Max D. He started off well, winning racing and skills. Freestyle, he thankfully made it through the whole clock without any truck issues, but Granger was wanting to make it through the whole run. He was hoping for one big final finish, to put the truck into the ground as Tom Meents would have wanted. However, a failed backflip caused him to break a 4-link upon landing, and he would not be able to continue. While many were disappointed to see Blake not even have the chance to tear that truck up at the end of his run, at least Max D left Monster Jam with some victories under its belt. It did feel a little anticlimactic and to some very sudden, but its exit from the sport wasn't exactly handled the best in my honest opinion. For starters, there was no big announcement or really any communication Rather, it seemed like they were happy to finally get rid of the truck. The event was not streamed to YouTube Live, instead uploaded later that day due to the time difference between Sydney and the rest of America. So many would have to see Max D's run either through Instagram or later on the YouTube live stream. In addition, all of its merchandise, including driver shirts, which were the only ones for sale and are usually never sold on here, were on display and for purchase. Further proof that it felt like the truck's time was coming to an end, and they were thankful to get rid of anything related to the truck. The history of Maximum Destruction is more than just the story of the truck. It's the story of one of the most dominant teams in all of Monster Trucks. It was the Yang to Gravedigger's Yin, and its driver Tom Meents played a very important part in making the truck's history so prestigious. Not only that, but Maximum Destruction has transformed Monster Jam into the powerhouse it is today. Sure, it may not be the most marketable or best-selling truck. In fact, you would probably be surprised of what trucks sell better, but it's one of only 2 trucks that's identity feels intertwined with Monster Jam itself. To see the end of Maximum Destruction marks the end of an era. One that I don't know if many of us will see in our lifetime again. Like I've said though, this video is as much about its founding figure as it is about the truck itself. And man, what a career Tom Meents has had. To have more than 1 championship is impressive, but to have 14 is on another plane of existence. Meents constantly proved he was capable of adapting to the times, and he now uses this knowledge to teach the next generation, training students to become hopefully future prodigies. Not only that, but for many, he characterized our childhood and made countless memories along the way. Maximum Destruction was a truly special truck, with an even more special driver.
I don't normally do this, but today is a very special occasion. Tom Meents, if you happen to be listening or watching this video, I just want you to be aware of the fact of how much you mean to Monster Jam fans like myself and everyone else that's watching this video and all of the monster truck industry folk. It doesn't matter where they are, they appreciate you and I appreciate you. The commitment that you've had to this sport for so long and the performances that you've done for the entertainment of the fans and even other drivers, it shows no bounds. I remember watching World Finals 1. I had a DVD box set because we didn't get Monster Jam on TV here until a couple of years, so I'd have to watch the DVDs. And all I remember was just you kicking Dennis Anderson's ass each and every week. And it was so awesome. And Max D easily became one of my favorite trucks, if not my favorite truck of all time. I'm literally wearing the shirt for it here. Max D became a truck that you expected the top level performance of. If Gravedigger wasn't at its A game, you knew that Max D would. And even when Max D wasn't, you knew that something crazy would happen. I've had the pleasure of meeting you 3 times, 2 times at World Finals last year, and I saw you compete in Sydney in 2018, and I loved every second of being around you, watching you compete, and just, it's hard to describe the impact that you and other monster truck people have made in my life, but you specifically, Team Max D and Tom Meents, what you mean to me, it shows no bounds, and I thank you for that. I thank you for all the childhood memories that you've made, and I can't express my thanks enough. However, I can try in some respect to show my gratitude and show how much you and your truck means to me. So I decided that I would reach out to some friends and maybe some people that you know to say how much they mean to you and congratulating you on your incredible career. So that's all from me, Tom. Thank you so much for everything you've done and congratulations on your incredible career in Monster Jam.
Favorite moment of Tom Meents was 2017 at MetLife Stadium, where he did that sidewall save. I was able to see it right in front of me. Like, I had a perfect view of it. It was just really insane. I was really glad I was able to see him compete.
So I personally have two Max D moments, Tom Meents moments that I love, that are really near and dear to me. The first one is going back to 2018 when I was in Orlando, Florida. I saw Tom at the pit party, told him it was my 10th year at Monster Jam, showed him pictures of me from 10 years earlier, and when he saw me in the stands after two-wheel, when he broke off a spike, he gave it to me. He came to me, handed it to me, and that was a really special moment in my life. The first time I ever got something from Tom Meents. That was a really special moment, and I always have it sitting there. And my other favorite moment was one that was when I was working for Monster Jam, and I worked at the World Finals in 2023. Seeing Tom Meents on the morning of the event, he was riding his bicycle down underneath the stadium, just chilling, saying hello to everybody, and it was one of the funniest things ever, and that I also hold near and dear to me. So Max D, Tom Meents always holds a special place in my heart.
Hey Tom, a great career, a lot of amazing freestyles I can remember watching back in the day. I remember watching Dennis Harrison going out before you, and he put a heck of a run down, and the kids behind me were all screaming like, "Oh yeah, Dennis is gonna win it." And I said, "Just you wait, Tom Meents is out. He's the last one out. He's gonna do something special. Just you wait." And you went out there and definitely put on a performance. I will never forget that run for sure.
Hey Tom, it's me, the Lord. It's been no secret all these years that you've been my favorite driver. That's never changed since I was 5 or 6 years old. Saw you at my first show and you killed it. And you killed it all the way up until the end of your career last year. And none of that is lost on me. You're number one till the day you die, till the day I die. And that's how I see it. And also I gotta let in my favorite Max D moment is when we had that Maximum dinner in Seattle a couple of years ago. You know.
Hey, this is Jack Meredith, aka California Monster Trucks, and I don't have enough time to say how I really feel about Tom Meents in this video and what he means to the attraction of Monster Trucks as a whole, but I've been a fan of Monster Trucks since 2001, and I've been a fan of Tom Meents since 2001. Tom is the ultimate professional, competitor, entertainer, personality, showman, innovator, representative. You know, he's the total package of Monster Trucks in one person, and he is bigger than the trucks that he drove. In his presence, he is bigger than any of the trucks that he drove. And I'm lucky to be able to see him in person, win championships, to be the man, to have these great individual interactions with him and with my family and him as well. Those are things I'm never going to forget. And I know not everyone gets to have those opportunities. I feel very lucky for that. And, you know, it's tragic that him and Dennis, you know, went out swinging, but I think it's kind of poetic in a way that two warriors went down in the heat of battle. That's all I can say. You're the greatest of all time. So thank you very much.
It's an honor to be able to congratulate you, Tom, on an amazing career and a 14-time World Finals champion. How about that? I know you're thinking to yourself, Andersons, can they beat that? I don't know. But Tom Meents, you did it, man. Thank you so much for an incredible career. You've done so much for all these amazing fans, and there's so many that look up to you. You've inspired the next generation of monster truck driving, and you still help out. You're the professor. One of my favorite moments is back in the Monster Patrol days, you would get out of the truck, climb the tire, run in front of the truck, throw the helmet at the truck, and get it to stop. And that was freaking awesome. Then my first ever show, Tampa 2011, you came out in Maximum Destruction. Nobody else could get any momentum in freestyle or any good traction. You sent that truck across the track. You did some Maximum Cyclones, and you went over the jammer and did some insane sidewalls into the barrier. That was a moment I will never forget. You've inspired so many, like I said, and it's such a great honor to be able to congratulate you on a great career and so many awesome moments. Frogman, I'm honored to be here, and thank you so much. Make sure that you keep your wife happy at home, do that honey-do list, and stay good. Thank you so much, Tom. God bless, and can't wait to see what you do next. Keep on being a great professor, and we'll see you around.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Monster Truck Champion of the World from Jackson, Illinois, Tom Meents and Maximum Destruction! out, and that's just, oh, he stuffed it. I mean, he literally stuffed it. He's still not done.
He runs within these freestyle competitions, and unlike any other,
now
what a
we're in
save!
business. Now business is picking up. Flops a low, look out! It's a complete backflip! In the bonus time, with this move, he's in trouble. No, he's not in trouble. Wait a minute. I got nothing. I didn't know what to say after that. What do you even say? That's insane! Here, but the point is, he's making something out of nothing. Oh, wow! Oh, he puts on a heck of a show, and nobody's ever had air like that here before.
Sickle save attempt. Can he get it? Whoa, almost had it, but Tom Mentz still rolling. Look at this, and he nails it.
Wow.
Unbelievable.